Gemma, a brilliant roboticist at a toy company, uses artificial intelligence to develop Megan, short for Model 3 Generative Android, a lifelike doll programmed to be a child's greatest companion and a parent's greatest ally. Woohoo! Let's go! Okay, we literally just got done with watching the movie. Let's just start with the important stuff about 1 to 10, how many screams do you give this?
Oh, right in the beginning, huh?
Yeah.
Still thinking about the movie, but I like it. I like it as an 8 scream, solid 8 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I agree with that. Why do you like it so much? Why do you think?
Well, it's it brings up a lot of issues or a lot of topics that are around today, like the development of children and how the influence of technology is replacing the human the relationship, and also at a more mature level, which there's been lectures on how, because it's an AI type of vibe too, so talks about how moving so fast in technology and all that, how it could, you don't know what could really happen. You know, like there's some caution on people who are trying to create these things now. There's actually lectures out there from Elon Musk and interviews, and how they're saying, you know, it's our responsibility to be very careful with what we're doing with the AI technology.
Right.
So it's a real thing. It's not just, you know, and the people who are creating it, you know, there's also, you know, people who are very technically advanced and just kind of geniuses. They're kind of detached from human relationship too, in regards, because they're so in their head about the technology and all the other aspects of it. How one little mistake of not seeing something could change everything. And we see that in many movies.
Yeah, and AI is already changing literally everything. And we see, like you were talking about, like AI taking over where humans used to be. And we've seen this on like a smaller level with something as simple as we see in the stores every day, you know, where it used to be checkers would check people out. And then it turned into, you know, these automatic, you know, help yourself kind of registers where we do that. And that's like the very most like basic understanding how AI has kind of filtered into our world. But this is really interesting what you're saying too, because there is like I watched an interview with Google. I forget what their positions were, but they literally were talking about how this conversation about AI and giving it the ability to grow and adapt on its own makes it a sentient being. And there's a moral area here of when do you turn off, when something can think and grow consciously on its own, you know, at what point does it become a sentient being where you're then just taking away its life, right? So Star Trek Next Generation talked about that with Data. Okay, so what I want to ask you is, what level of scary did you find it?
I wasn't like scared of the movie. It was more thought-provoking, right, for me, because it brought up issues of what gets talked about. You know, as us, of what we do as in our occupation, we're always working with people, working with as educators, or what we do, we're always in relationships, building in our daily lives, right? So it brings up all those. It's very thought-provoking because we see it in plain sight, and how technology could we can't take technology for granted, because there's always that thing, like we always say that now if something happens, like we talk to technology, like if an iPad's not working right or something, you're like, oh, it's kind of being moody. Like we actually give it recognition that it doesn't want to work for us today. And then we start going, okay, be nice to it. Like it's almost, there's this other breathing organism that and we've seen several movies like this in the past. There's that one movie, Ex Machina, and then there's that other one with Will Smith. He like created something, but he stayed back to try to, because he created, or the iBot, I think that's what it's called. It's like iRobot, like they create these droids and all that, and how technology, once they gain in, it's kind of like what you're saying about Star Trek, the Borg or something.
Yeah, once it becomes a sentient being. But as far, before we go way into that, the question was about how scary it was. Yeah. So yes, it was, to me, it was definitely thought-provoking, and I do want to talk about the healing aspect of that, because there was a strong element of healing and that. But before we go on to that, I want to say that I felt that this movie was definitely thought-provoking. It was definitely interesting. I don't think it was particularly scary. It was more creepy.
Like thriller for sure.
Thriller and kind of creepy, but not the type of creepy where you didn't know what was going to happen. I feel like
a boy.
I feel like we already knew kind of that what was going to happen with this robot. So I feel like there was some definite, like, I'm doing this because there were some. Yeah, it was very Chucky. It was like, I said something to you in the, what did I say
it's
though?
It's like the old Chucky thing because of just the
But how did I say it? It was like Chucky. It's basically like Chucky with like
4.0 or
like
something.
Intelligence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Super intelligence, not like
emotionally manipulative. Being able to calculate what your emotions are, so you could never be a step ahead of the doll. And this is the part of the conversation that scares us about, even right now about technology, is that there's a responsibility that we have in creating technology that is going to become self-aware, right? And showing you in the movie the slip-ups that these scientists were making in not putting in the protections. Like, oops, I forgot to put this part in.
And that's a big oops.
And it's like the part that gives the other person control to shut it off, and these are the dangers of what we have to look at with AI. But I think obviously they put like this huge, we're not there yet with that level of sentience, but I think it's good that we're having the conversation about the things that there are out there to be afraid of, because that is a scenario that absolutely could happen if we're not keeping our eyes on it. The healing aspect of it, I thought was good.
I'd like to go first. I think
okay.
I think the healing aspect, and also it's a learning of healing. I think there's a lesson in there, because...
What do you mean learning of healing?
Because there's a part of the movie that talks about if we're going through grief or anything to work through stuff, you can't plug it. You can't just put a little bit of tape on it and make sure it's okay. You have to actually let it drain until it's fluid. Maybe that's not the best metaphor, but...
What were you talking about, draining? I missed it.
Well, like if you're trying to stop a leak, like if water's leaking through, I'm just using the trauma as a drip, but it's not... You have to... There was a very human aspect that made... It was like, yep, exactly. You can never forget the trauma, but you have to live through it. That was the whole point. Like, not using something to like...
A proxy.
Yeah, like
because
something just
essence,
to kind of... Just to keep you warm a little bit. You can be okay. Here's a candy. You'll feel good for right now. Like, here's a lollipop, but...
Right, so you just touched on something that I want to say. In my healing practice, I always, when people come to me for healing, I tell them, we're not focused on feeling better. We're focused on getting better.
Yeah.
And, you can feel better by eating a piece of chocolate, a bag of chips, going to Disneyland, and you're going to feel better, but you're always going to come back to center, which is however you're feeling.
It acts like the placebo.
Right. And so in this movie, there's a lot of, initially a lot of talk about, the aunt is the one that's, basically taking over her niece, and she's going to have to raise her, and of course she didn't intend that, and she's a scientist making these robots and stuff. and
Genius, yeah.
and she's a genius, but she doesn't know how to be a parent, and so part of her is not even in that space to be a parent. It's like, this is just this kid, she's not mine, type of thing. But underneath all that, she also just realized that she doesn't know what she's doing, and you could tell that she's going to morph into a more caring person, because she's not a cold person. But at the very end of it, I think, is where we really get to see that the ant understands that there's that element that you can't just bypass the hard parts.
Yeah, you
and
gotta live through it.
And this is what I tell my clients, because a lot of times we think that we have to like auto correct ourselves constantly from feeling any bad emotions. And that isn't it at all. It's like, no, you feel bad emotions because something bad happened. You have to feel and experience what's happened to you. It doesn't mean you're going to stay there forever, but you can't bypass it with a candy, with Disneyland, chocolate.
It's temporary. That's just temporary.
Drugs, alcohol, whatever the story may be. You can't bypass that, and you can't bypass it with a proxy like this living robot that is your best friend. It's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep you from feeling distracted, all these other things. It's going to be the thing that's going to make you feel better, because if you're grieving, you still have to grieve, right? That was kind of the message, is like...
And you need to communicate, especially as a parent to child, there's a big, strong message there in the movie. Like, if you could look at just one part of it, just think about that as a parent. Like, you can't numb the situation or using other things just to get them what they want. You have to confront it and teach them how to be human and be strong enough as a parent or whoever's in that role to kind of face the music, like, for a better term, maybe. Right?
Yeah, and let's talk about the social commentary of it. There's this aspect of it to me of, beyond everything we've already talked about, which is, don't let technology be your kid's babysitter. And this is something that I want to say.
That's kind of like the obvious thing.
But it's not, because it's happening in everyday life. It's the obvious thing that everyone ignores. It's like it's in plain sight, and yet we're still dealing with that.
Yes, there's a scene in there that's a good reflection of that, when they get so caught up in the technology, when the aunt wanted to, like, no, we're going to talk about this, and try to turn off the machine, and she didn't want it. She was throwing a fit and all that.
That's like these tantrums and yelling and stuff like that.
It made it worse.
Yeah, and there's nothing that's going to replace the human interaction of teaching our children things. And hold on, with behavioral analysis, this is another point, is that we use technology with our children, and we're not really totally monitoring the things that they're getting endorphin rushes out of. And this is one of the most crucial things, that's programming our children, right? Because if children and adults are becoming they're say playing games that are extremely violent, and their brain is still growing, and they are getting endorphin rushes from violence, this has an impact on what trains the brain. And so it gets to this point where they only can feel some sense of enjoyment when they're watching violence or they're partaking in violence, and that can translate into how people are in the world. And I know there's a lot of debate about that, but behavioral scientists will tell you that there's truth to that with brain mapping. This is kind of what happens to the brain with impressionable children whose lobes are still forming and creating pathways. So there is some truth to that, and one of the Chase Hughes, who is like one of the leading behavioral scientists out there, has stated very clearly that parents need to be very careful with monitoring what their children are getting their endorphin rushes from, because that is a direct link to the programming of what they're going to be able to get satisfaction from in other things. If they're always getting endorphin rushes only from violence, that's kind of programming them that they need violence in order to to feel that feeling, which is a horrible thing to do, which is why it's really important to not use not use technology as a babysitter. Like, okay, go in your room and
or
just
regulate.
play your games.
But then, like in the beginning, there was that showed the process of responsible parents
that
and
died.
Someone who didn't know anything about parenting. It was like, oh, so how long can I be on the iPad?
Yeah, like the daughter knew the rules. She was self-regulated.
This person, of course, her aunt's like a genius always in the technology. That's scientist. They eat, breathe. That's all she does.
But she was like, also not a parent.
She was not a parent.
She never had to think about that. So she realized later.
Yeah.
But she never had to think about that, and that's why I said it's like this evolution of
realization.
Her realization, and actually, I just had a thought, is that was a really interesting thing that helped her evolve as a scientific technologist. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. An AI.
I think what it helped her relationship with her niece and going through all of this stuff helped her evolve as a scientist
with AI
because she never looked at that element as a parent. And what it does, when you are, even some of her coworkers or co-scientists who are building this thing were questioning and saying, well, if you're using this Megan to basically do everything a parent is doing, and you're literally replacing the parent. And also then the psychologist in the movie who's who's there working with her niece because her parents had died in a car crash is saying, she was like, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm concerned, because this is a whole new technology. And she's like, I'm concerned that you're creating emotional ties that are going to be impossible to unravel because this doll is so human that you can't just throw her away. She's sentient. Right? Like, and so how are you going to get the girl to be able to exist without her when she becomes basically like your sister or your mother? She was kind of a mother figure to her, right? She was kind of
a tutor and a teacher.
Everything. She was like becoming everything to her and replacing even her aunt, who, was just learning to start being involved, So I just thought it was great commentary. I wish that it was a little bit, I wanted to be more scared than I was. Yeah. And it was a little, I guess I wasn't as scared about it because I knew that she was going to turn into this creepy robot. We've seen this, what do we call it? Not template,
theme.
Not,
a template. That's another way of saying it, but.
Blueprint. We've seen this movie Blueprint before with AI. Although it's still very interesting, it's still good enough that we both gave it an 8 in screams.
We went out and
I wish it was a little more thriller, a little more scary. I wish it didn't put it. I wish even that they held back a little bit, even in the trailer, so that we could maybe wonder how this. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard not to know already, if as a thriller, that this is going to go terribly wrong. We already kind of know it, but we kind of love that about, these really real dolls, and we love the conversation about just the social responsibility that we have in creating AI.
I think that's what the film makes you think. It's a think piece, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Of all those issues. AI, parental responsibility, and how technology is affecting our society now and families, of how we develop in our modern world as humans. And
you know what?
Building a household. AI is part of the household.
It is now. And it's, the thing that's really interesting that we don't even know or even ask enough questions about, but we are seeing it play out in our world. And at some point, they're probably doing studies now, and we'll have some data, but social media and the 24-hour exposure to that is really wreaking havoc on our human etiquette. our
Yeah.
human behavior, and we don't even yet understand the damage that's causing our society.
yeah.
But we are seeing it play out live, and eventually we're going to have some studies behind that that's going to show this is how we were before. This is the study I want. This is how we were before social media. This is how we were after it, after maybe what, I don't know, 20 years,
30 years,
you know, and
years,
seeing certain behavioral things and family and looking at the statistics.
It's already there.
So that's the thing I want to know, is I want some concrete data on just seeing that, because already we know that has had a huge impact. So that's it, you guys. Oh my goodness, we watched Megan. We would recommend that you go see it. It's a lot of fun.
See, this is good. Look at, boys playing, kicking a soccer outside.
Oh yeah, there's kids out here. We're passing by and they're actually playing kickball. This
outside.
Is so cool. Hello.
Yeah, that's what kids need to be doing, not on their
they need
playing
to be
with
outside.
their robots, the little digital robot machines.
Exactly. All right, so you guys do not forget to like and subscribe. Smash that bell so that you know every time that we put out a new spooky review. Until next time, stay spooky.